but we need to go on now to Phil and Holly, which is the biggest story of the day. So what we've got here, there's rather row basically about the king and queen of breakfast TV having a fallout. Might not seem too important to a lot of people, or indeed perhaps his hidden and later confessed adulterous relationship with a young showrunner who by all accounts was left none too happy about it after it ended. There is a bigger issue at stake here. Now the ITV license is up for renewal, and there are, usually some kind of morality clauses within ITV or TV licensing renewal, which is it has to be done by fit and proper people and has to meet certain standards and so on. So the bosses are going to be quizzed by a parliamentary committee, and they're going to focus on the toxic culture at ITV and who knew what about the Phillip Schofield scandal, aren't they, Jason?
Yes, I mean I'm. So this is the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, which is looking at the media bill, which is kind of the future of public service broadcasting in Britain. So but this inquiry is already going on. And then it looks opportunistic to me. It probably is. And they'll say something else. They'll say, this is a kind of, a proper chance to investigate how a public service broadcasting company is operated or some guff like that. But it does look a bit opportunistic. So they've now kind of invited the head of ITV, Carolyn McCall, along to give evidence. And we can ask about Holly and Phil as well. And guess what? We get lots of headlines from doing it.
Yes.
I mean, how relevant what one show on ITV, among the many hours of broadcasting they do on multiple channels, it is to the future of public service broadcasting. I'm not convinced it's that relevant at all, personally. But hey, the Cultural Media and Sport Committee get a moment in the spotlight, and they kind of, they can show that they're in tune with what really matters in the country, which is who's on the sofa.
They do like to get themselves on the television, and they do like to look like they're doing their job and earning their money, which is just part of, once you get elected, you do have to keep showing it, kind of thing. If they, it's politics is showbiz for ugly people, isn't it? So that's partly why they do tend to call people in if they're in the news and find a reason to talk to them. But a lot of the stuff that's come out about Phil and Holly, about who knew what, where Dr. Ranch has said he made a complaint and it never went anywhere, and that he then got managed out of the show. There is potential there perhaps for someone to start talking about, which bosses knew what and when at ITV, and what did you do about it? What did you do when Dr. Ranch came to you with a problem? What did you do about it? Did Holly Willoughby ever complain? Did anyone else ever complain? Did this showrunner ever bring it to you? You said you had some kind of mini investigation into the Phillip Schofield business, but you couldn't find any evidence and you dropped it. How hard did you look exactly? And did you treat him any differently afterwards? Did you speak to him? Did you discipline him? They can ask a lot of really quite awkward questions, which I'm sure the ITV bosses would rather not answer, because the relevance to it is, if there's a management issue, if it's not just about Phillip Schofield and whatever he did or didn't do, but it's a management issue at the top of ITV, then there's potential perhaps for someone saying, well, look, you should all be out of a job.
My view is that if this committee wants to look at anything, it really should be looking at things like GB News and how a channel which is kind of stretching the limits of impartiality rules by kind of giving air to conspiracy theorists and anti-vaxxers, etc., is allowed to operate. That, to me, is a much more serious issue than which personality shares a sofa with another personality on one particular program, Susie. And something obviously went very wrong on This Morning, and there was a kind of obviously an issue with the internal politics and the cultural politics, but it's one program. And it's like, ITV does hundreds of hours of programming on its various channels. Yeah. And to kind of obsess about this and say that the whole organization kind of rests on just what happened on This Morning seems to me preposterous.
Well, it may be, but, what happens if Caroline McCall comes out and says something which is indicative, or says, the ITV management tend to do X, Y, and Z in these situations. And then someone who worked on an Ant and Dec show, or someone who worked on Loose Women, or someone who worked on one of the other ITV shows, well, said, hang on, I know for a fact that that isn't what happened when I made a complaint about such and such. And then they go to the papers, because when she comes out and whatever she says, there could be enough people hanging on it to start using that in the same way that we saw Boris Johnson's interview at the airport in Dulles the other day, and that he was starting to almost hang himself with the stuff he started saying that definitely hadn't happened, that, later on you're going to bookmark and come back to it and you go, well, this got proved wrong, didn't it? If she comes out, whatever she says, it's going to get picked over by so many people. There is the potential there for it to snowball considerably out of just being, as you've said, about one personality on one sofa on one show, to being about far more.
But it's telly, Susie. That's the thing. It's just,
politics doesn't care, everybody.
This is what, it's filled with well-paid, fragile egos who, have kind of like, you only have to watch Drop the Dead Donkey to know what telly's like.
There are people watching the show who now have to Google Drop the Dead Donkey and try and figure out what on earth that was. I remember trying to watch it when I was like 13. My mum said I couldn't. Now, Mike says it's interesting that Eamon Holmes said this week that everyone knew, but oddly he didn't know or didn't say at the time. We were saying off air, Mike, one of the things about the Phillip Schofield scandal is that there have been rumours going about for a long time that there was something amiss with Phillip at This Morning. And the rumours I heard were things about being very controlling and perhaps a little bit bullying, and that there were rumours about a fling with somebody. But it's no good hearing a rumour if you don't have the person who can confirm it for you. And the fact that the person who has confirmed it has now, whatever, has told some lawyers that was involved with something that Phillip Schofield was doing, and that's got to the journalist, and then they're able to confront Phillip Schofield with it. That is not because everyone knew something and didn't say and sat on it, or Eamon Holmes sat on it. It's just that you can kind of see things and you're just not able to do anything about it. I'd only went on the This Morning sofa once with Phil and Holly, and they were both quite charming. But then one point in the interview, Philip suddenly sort of snapped a bit at me and the other guest. I thought, oh, you're not very nice, are you? But that was it. And, I was just left with a sense that he probably was a bit of a bully underneath, but I couldn't do anything about it. I wasn't part of the show. I didn't know anybody there, and someone snaps at you once, it's not grounds for a complaint, is it? And that's the kind of thing I suspect that Eamon Holmes and others may have seen, something that's not quite enough to complain about. And we've seen that in lots of different scandals, whether it's Me Too, whether it's the Harvey Weinstein business. People have seen things, and until someone actually comes out with the confirmation of the big awful thing, there's nothing anyone can really do, unfortunately. But we are where we are. And Jason is going to have to enjoy the fact that in the next week or so, there's going to be a lot of showbiz journalists turning up in Parliament saying, "What's this then? And how does this work? What's the committee?"
We need it. We need some a sprinkling of showbiz glamour on the very boring world I operate in.
I'm sure the politicians will love it too. Pity we don't have the 3 a.m. girls anymore, but they would obviously have turned up and sat at the back of the select committee if they could. We'll have to see how things pan out a little bit in there.
Nothing can be weirder than the time when I covered Uri Geller, Michael Jackson, and Keith Vaz doing a tour of Parliament.
What happened?
We still have no idea why the 3 of them were there.
Good Lord, I don't know which of those people is the most scandalous. Keith Vaz, Uri Geller, and Michael Jackson all in the same.
Yeah, it's very, very odd. It's hard to.
Yes. Is there photographic evidence of this? I think we should see. At some point.
Yes.
This is the kind of thing that happens when you talk to journalists. They suddenly pop up with something and you go, what? It derails everything you're doing. Now, there is some talk in the papers. Let us know what you think about this, everybody, by the way, about Phillip making a comeback. Do you think that he could go on Strictly Come Dancing? Do you think he could restore his reputation with a weep fest in the I'm a Celebrity jungle, which is what some papers are talking about? Now, the BBC, his side said, I think last week, that he might do Strictly, but the BBC very quickly scotched that and said no. Eamon Holmes has said Holly won't be back on the sofa again, although she is due back on Monday, so who knows what Eamon actually knows. He did say on GB News, which may be part of the problem. Although, and there are some saying the entire show all of this morning could just go off air and that's it, no more after the summer break. And it does seem to be that there's a lot of people, just journalistically speaking, Jason, there's a lot of people taking a very sharp step backwards, right? There's a lot of, I didn't know, he lied to me, reverse, because they can kind of, it smells like there's more to this somewhere and it's going to come out somehow.
I mean, I think,
just the fact everyone's reversing that bothers me,
Yeah, I think Phil is too talented a broadcaster not to come back. In what format, I don't know. I mean, he may be back in a broom cupboard with Gordon, the gopher, who knows? But, but if you're advising him, you'd say, wait a few months or weeks, and then you do the professional interview as a one-to-one, probably peers or something like that. That's how you do it, isn't it? And you unburden your soul. You get the public sympathy. You admit that you made mistakes, and then then you give it a little another break, and then you kind of slowly rebuild it with kind of fairly innocuous kind of programs, kind of one-offs. I mean, I'm not sure he's kind of this kind of the I'm a Celeb route or the Strictly route is probably the best way of doing it. I think it's more, and as I say, if it all goes really, really wrong, there's always GB News.
You could yet see Gordon the Gopher on GB News. Emma says it should be Holly and the ITV bosses who should be sitting in front of a committee explaining what was going on. I'm sure there will be more questions to ask if anyone ever gets to that point, but I'm sure also they'll have quite a lot of lawyers with them and be saying there's some things they just can't say, maybe. Yeah. Who knows? But as far as the old sort of mea culpa and a return to TV celebrity goes, where do you think anybody that he could possibly pitch up? And Jason, I tend to think that actually it's far too soon to talk about any of this because the scandal isn't finished. It just smells like there's more there, and you've really got to wait to see what everything comes out, what is going to come out, and wait for that to happen before you can even start to think about rehabilitating yourself at all. Jan says, I think Phil should simply fade away into retirement. Be a bit like Andrew Ridgeley and just move to Cornwall and stay there. It may well happen. Who knows? We'll have to see. Jason thinks he can make a bit of a comeback at some point. Maybe Great Antiques road trip, that kind of thing, something innocuous. But, there's all kinds of... I think, unfortunately, there isn't anybody advising Phil at the moment because everybody who was advising him stopped doing it, which is one of those, the sharp step back thing that seems to be happening.
Eamon Holmes under the hammer. That'll be it.
Eamon Holmes under the hammer. Who knows? We'll find out, I'm sure. But I do think that when it goes to Parliament, actually, Jason, you will be watching that as thoroughly and as carefully as everybody else will be to hear what is said by Caroline McCall about whatever was really going on there, because there's definitely something. My nose doesn't lie.